Hey, Soraya.
Hey, Jeff, how you doing?
I'm doing good. So we just finished our call with the Telltale Hearts. And it's funny because I did not expect that we were going to have all five members of the band. In fact, when we start this episode, there's only four of the guys. And they had multiple band members, but the band members that we're talking to today with Ray, Mike, David, Bill, and Eric were the members of the band that recorded the couple albums that are out there. But we didn't think that Bill was going to be able to participate. But as you all hear, he pops in.
He pops in and makes a splash, which is awesome.
Yeah. So hopefully you guys enjoy this. The next part of our series, talking about Vox recording artists. We've talked about the Pandoras, talked about the things. So up next, here's our conversation with the Telltale Hearts.
Enjoy.
Hi, this is Soraya.
And this is Jeff.
Our podcast is called Paisley Stage Raspberry and Rhyme.
A podcast where the two of us play music that we like and share anecdotes and background about the tunes.
We hope you'll join our conversation. And without further ado, a grooviar.
Let's get groovy.
On today's episode, we're continuing our mini-series covering Vox recording artists. Soraya, we've had the Pandoras on, we've had the Things on. We're going to have the Steps on here shortly, but today we're covering a band that comes from an area that's closer to where I'm from for a change, Soraya. It's not Los Angeles. So we got San Diego-based band, the Telltale Hearts. And you know I'm a huge fan of these guys, Soraya. So I'm very excited. So today on the call, we've got the lead vocalist, and I call you a percussionist. I don't know if maracas and tambourine qualify as a percussionist, but Ray Brandis on the show.
Don't forget the cowbell. Don't forget the cowbell.
You can't forget the cowbell.
And I believe I used one of those South American fish on a couple of songs as well.
Oh, nice.
Can't remember the name of it. But...
Yeah, isn't it?
A Weedle.
What is it, Soraya?
A Weedle.
Oh, that's close to Wedo.
Brazilian fish.
Yeah. And then also we have bassist Mike Stax. Mike, welcome to Paisley Stage Raspberry and Rhyme.
Hey, nice to be here.
And then also we have David Klowden, drummer. Welcome, David.
Good evening.
And then Eric, I've always pronounced your name Bacher, and I'm notorious for messing up names. Is Bacher the correct pronunciation for your last name?
Oh, he's not. We don't hear him.
Oh, I think we got...
He's explaining that the correct pronunciation is Bacher.
Okay, I'll leave that to Soraya.
No, I'm just kidding. No, Bacher is right. Eric, we don't have your microphone. We can't hear you.
I wanted to welcome all of you guys, the Telltale Hearts, minus Bill Calhoun, who we tried to get in touch with, but we weren't able to. So, Telltale Hearts, welcome to Paisley Stage Raspberry and Rhyme. I'm super excited to have you guys on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
So, for all of you, we have to be perfectly honest. We don't know a whole lot about the band's history. So, we're really happy to have four of you on to help us fill in the gaps. From what we do know, Ray, Bill, and David were previously in a band known as the Mystery Machine. Ray and David, can you talk to us a little bit about that band?
Ray, that's you.
Well, the Mystery Machine, the entire band history is only about 2 months, 3 months, I think, tops. Carl Rusk started the band, and then I was the singer, and we had David as drummer, Bill Calhoun as organist, and Mark Sadonowski, who was a former crawdaddy, was playing bass. And I think we only learned 12, 13 songs, something like that. And then and we played them all at the three gigs we had in Southern California. We played once at headquarters in San Diego. We played once in Orange County, and then once at the Lhasa Club, I think, in Los Angeles.
Ray Brandis.
Bill's here. Woo!
Hey!
Made it!
Hey.
Oh, right!
We made it.
Just happened to check my email 5 minutes ago, Ray, and I saw your message. So here I am.
We can't see you though. Have you got a camera?
Yeah. Let's see. Share screen.
There he is.
Start
There he
video.
is.
Let's try
Hey,
that.
hey, listen, I need to get a,
Hey,
I need to get a
Bill.
photograph.
Great to see you guys. How you been?
Awesome. You look good, Bill.
Well, thanks. I'm living in the great northern part of Nevada, and it's really hot and sunny right now.
Is it like 120 there or what? What's going on?
Well, no, it's not like Las Vegas hot, but it's about 102 here. So it's pretty summery.
I consider that Las Vegas hot.
And are you guys all still in San Diego?
We are.
Yeah.
Wow.
We're sharing an apartment.
It's a new reality show.
Oh gosh. Well, I'm so glad I got invited. So what's the deal? What are we all doing on the line here?
Well,
Well-
Bill, we were waiting for you. All the questions
cool.
are going to come
I'm
to
here.
you.
Oh gosh.
Well, actually, Bill, this is a good point for you to jump in because I was having a little bit of trouble remembering details about the Mystery Machine, other than we played three gigs or so, and it was we were really inspired that summer by listening to a lot of folk rock music, a lot of LA sounds. So we played. I don't think we played any Birds songs, but we played all songs that were kind of Birds inspired. 12 string.
Yeah, I think there was a little 12 string going on then.
Quite a lot.
I mean,
Little Rickenbacker action on Carl's part.
historically, like you'd have to go back pretty far to tell the whole story because there's a lot of backstory to how the Mystery Machine formed. In my case, I was in a punk rock band, and I mean like hardcore punk rock. I was the lead screamer of a punk band. And around 1982, the punk scene started to take a turn for the worst. Because prior to then, it had just been a bunch of like, artsy, nerdy weirdos and misfits coming together, and anything, you could do whatever you wanted in that scene. And, you'd go you'd see the Crawdaddies that were like this incredible R&B band. Then you'd see like a band playing like complete art noise, or another band playing power pop or whatever. I mean, it was just like, and I loved all of it. But in 1982, as the hardcore scene started to get more and more violent, I started to notice the girls were leaving the punk scene. So you'd go to the shows and just be a bunch of sweaty skinheads and stuff, and it was disgusting. The punk scene didn't smell as good anymore. And so but I noticed that the shows that the Crawdaddies were playing were still fun. The music was still good. It was still exciting. And Mike, at that time, when I was checking out the Crawdaddies in '79 at the Skeleton Club and in '80 all over town, they became my favorite band. And I started like not caring about the punk bands and wanting to just go see this R&B band. They just seemed more rock and roll and more interesting and more fun and more, and open to more people. And so I started roadieing for the Crawdaddies. I would like carry equipment in for them so I could get into the shows. And then I figured it would be easier to get into the shows for free if I was in a band, because I'd already done that as a punk rocker. So I had to quickly learn an instrument. So I got a drum set, didn't know how to play. And I was talking to a friend of the Mystery Machine guys, which was this guy named Jerry Cornelius, who's a kind of interesting character in all of this, who you'll see doing the intro in German to our show that was just recently uncovered, the Music Machine show. So Jerry, I lied and told him I knew how to play drums. I'd never played drums. And so the Mystery Machine said, oh, well, we'll give him a tryout. And I went over to Carl's house. And I think at that time, at the tryout, I think Ron Silva was there. I don't even know what it is. And he said, play a Bo Diddley beat. And I was like, what's that? and he showed me, and I was like, I don't know if I can do that. And then they were like, you can't play, what the fuck? Get out of here, kid. And then, so I was humiliated. And so I went and got a drum set and some headphones and started learning like a slightly better cheap Japanese kit. And I mean, I was playing drums for probably 4 months when I somehow persuaded Jerry to convince them that no, I'd been practicing and I could play a Bo Diddley beat now. And so the Mystery Machine let me come and try out. And I still couldn't play, but for some reason, Ray and Carl and Bill, you guys were just like, okay, you're in, because I don't think Paul Carsola probably wanted to be like, doing rifle drills or something rather than play. The guy who was the original drummer. So that's my entry into the Mystery Machine, which was also my whole entry into that world, you know?
Oh, wow.
And so Carl and I had been playing together in various bands for several years. We knew Bill from high school, and Bill was also dating my sister, and Bill kind of took up the organ about the same time as well as David took up the drums. So for those two, at least, it was kind of a first band experience. And
well, first
as a drummer, right? Yeah. Yeah, but like I said, I think we only played 3 gigs, and that was kind of coinciding with the time that the Crawdaddies were falling apart. And I'll let Mike take it from here. But Mike was actually hanging out with Bill and Carl and David and
Yeah,
me.
I lived at Carl's house, so I was there for that whole. I was kind of like the Mystery Machines roadie. You know, I think I was at all 4 gigs. You know.
Were you were keeping us supplied in Lucky Lager?
Probably not paying for it. I was probably opening.
No, definitely not.
Helping them
We're helping us with the
puzzles on the bottle caps, though. That's what intrigued me, and that's what got me to stay hanging out with you guys in Presidio Park.
So, Mike, how did you come to join the band as the bassist?
Well, I started out in the Crawdaddies, so I came over from England, in fact, to join Crawdaddies on bass. I was, I've told this story so many times, but I was listening to John Peel's radio show one night, and I heard and he played a Crawdaddies record. And I couldn't believe that it was a band from then, which was 1979, because they sounded like 1964, they sounded like bands that I liked, like Pretty Things and the Yardbirds. And eventually I wrote them kind of a fan letter, care of Bomb Records, and Greg Shaw forwarded it to Ron Silver. Said, yeah, you should reply to this guy. He sounds very sincere. I saw that letter later. So Ron replied, and I'd mentioned in the letter that I play bass, and I've been trying to form a band to play that kind of music. And in his letter, he said, why don't you move to San Diego and come join the Crawdaddies, because our bass player's leaving. So
was that Mark?
Yeah, Mark was leaving. So
he didn't know it at the time.
Yeah, I'm not sure. He may not have known. It took me a few months to kind of save up the money, but I just got out of high school. I didn't really want to go to college yet, so I came over with like $200 in my pocket and a bass guitar and a 3-month tourist visa, and I've been here ever since.
Wow.
That was at the end of 1980. So they didn't build the wall that could stop me.
Thank God.
Yeah. But anyway, so I was in the Crawdaddies for a little while, and by 1983, I think that was, I don't know, I was thinking the Crawdaddies had kind of jumped the shark a little bit. They were doing very straight R&B and soul music, and I wanted to still do more like that Pretty Things, Yardbirds style music. Plus, also, I was really getting more and more into the American garage stuff, like the Seeds and the 13 Floor Elevators, which they really didn't like at all. So I wanted to.
Yeah, if I can interject.
What the hell's wrong with those people?
Well, you know, the way I remember it is Mike was really trying to drag them kicking and screaming into 1966. And we're just not having it.
I did for a while. They even changed the band name to the Howling Man, and we sort of, I think we had a little good run there, you know, where it was getting to be a little more 1966, and you know there was
Chocolate Watch Band.
Right, did Chicago.
You know, but then they started. Then they were like, oh no, we're going to do this Dionne Warwick song, and I was like, no, let's do this We the People song. And actually, in the meantime, I met Bill and Ray, and we had a few little side bands that we put together to just play at parties. And I was having way more fun hanging out with Ray and Bill than I was hanging out with the Crawdaddies. So eventually, push came to shove, and I was going to quit, but they fired me before the gig. I was going to quit after the gig.
I never heard that before.
You were gonna get all $4 from that.
Well, it was. I think I was going to get $50 or $75. It was a pretty good paying show. and Bill, I remember Bill and I drove up for it. It was in LA, and I got there, and they were like, "Oh, you're out of the band."
Oh my gosh, I totally
before we
remember
drove all
that.
the way up. And that was fine because by the time we got home, me and Bill had already said, "Okay, we're going to have the band with Ray."
Yeah, I think we must have just gone to Tommy Burgers and headed back home after a while.
Yeah, yeah. And so we got back home, immediately called Ray, and we started forming the band. And then we, David was a logical choice because he'd been in the Mystery Machine, who had just broken up. And then,
And you know, as soon as I heard about this, I immediately thought of Eric, because Eric and I went to school together, and we met in like an English class where we were both like reading Charles Bukowski and Kerouac and shit like that, and not what was on the requirement list for the course, you know. And we bonded over literature, I think, both, and being, you know, kind of like weirdos and music nerds, and I think Eric was the first guy that ever introduced me to marijuana. The first time I ever smoked weed was like I was given a big box of Ritz crackers and put down in front of Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon album, and Eric and Carl Draney played that for me, and I was like, okay, this is some different shit. It didn't stick for a while, but anyway, but Eric, you know, I told him about the band, and you know, and Eric was playing guitar and thought it would be interesting. So Eric, do you remember that?
Yeah, I do. It was the, actually, I think the first time I met Mike is when I went to Carl's house for my interview, which lasted
It was
about,
an interview?
Yeah, it lasted about 45 seconds before Mike, for some reason, thought I'd be a good fit. And it was just after that, it was just a non-issue. It was just, you know, there was no question about it, you know. And I still don't understand why.
I don't remember any kind of audition or anything. I think we just had to meet you and figure out if you were cool or not, you know?
Yeah, I think we were just sitting on the bed in some room, and you were playing some records and just getting my feedback, and we took it from there.
You already liked, like, you were really into blues already, right?
Yeah, well, I was, you know, at the time, I mean, if you'll remember in 12th grade English, the reason I started even going out was because the Answers, another local band, was playing Lucifer Sam by Pink Floyd. And that was your hook to get me to actually go out to a show, to see a band doing that live, you know? So I went out, and one of those times after seeing the Answers once or twice, it was a show with the Howling Men, and that's the first time I ever saw Mike and the rest of the Crawdaddies, and that was my favorite band after that. Those guys were just so great, you know? And Mike had black hair at the time.
That week.
When I first saw Mike, he had black hair and a big medallion.
That was
your Sean Bonniwell phase, right?
Well, that's what I was going for, but as soon as I dyed my hair black, everybody thought I was Joey Ramone. I looked a lot like Joey Ramone with my hair black, which was not my plan. As much as I love Joey, I didn't want to look like him. So, but it took a few months to get that black out of my hair.
Yeah.
Okay, who names the band? Where does the name come from? Telltale Hearts.
Well, that idea was mine, and it came from Edgar Allan Poe. And I remember I was on the phone with a friend of ours called Wendy Gibbler, and we were talking about the band, and I was leafing through an Edgar Allan Poe book, and I said, "How about the Telltale Hearts?" And she said, "That's actually pretty cool." And then I suggested it to the other guys, but right away I knew that was a really cool name. You know, and everybody's, you know, you didn't have to explain to anybody in the band who Edgar Allan Poe was, because everybody in the band was kind of like,
yeah, we were all Poe fans.
You know? So it was perfect.
So there was no.
We were all Poe.
There was no disagreements when that was suggested. Everybody agreed to that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember us ever even considering another name. I mean, it fit perfectly, and you know, in retrospect, it's kind of surprising that there weren't already bands called the Telltale Hearts. So I mean, I think it's such a great name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are now.
Yeah.
There are a few. But
Are there? Oh.
I've seen a couple
I saw
online.
one from England somewhere, and they weren't anything good.
Well, we're talking about the good version of the Telltale Hearts. So we wanted to talk about your guys' debut album that I have in my hand, signed by Eric and Mike, I think at a Loons show. So the album came out in 1984 on Vox Records, and we're real curious how you guys came to be part of the Vox label.
We had a relationship with Greg Shaw from the beginning. As I mentioned, it was Greg who sent my letter to Ron that got me into the Crawdaddies. And Greg was always super encouraging to every band that had good taste. So when I left the Crawdaddies, you know, Greg was like, well, let me know what you do next. And he basically wanted to sign any band that could play, that was playing that kind of music. So he signed us, he signed the Gravedigger Five, and then the Miracle Workers from Portland. And in fact, and he must have booked a block of studio time at the studio up in LA, because the Gravedigger Five recorded their album the week before us. Then it was us, and then the Miracle Workers came in right after us. I mean, I think we each had 2 days or something like that, or maybe another day to mix. So Greg was just cranking out albums.
Yeah, I was trying to remember the other day because didn't we go up and record? Did we record something for the Battle of the Garage Bands first?
I want everyone to listen. I want everyone to listen. I said, listen, my world is upside down. I said, listen, baby, my world is upside down. Now I am like a broken limb on a tree. Since you left me, baby, I've lost a part of me. So I try to forget, I wouldn't take it again. Yeah, I know I was loose now, it's like a bullet in a pill. And I try to forget, baby, yeah. I try so hard. I try to forget, if it takes till the end of time. I said my word. I said my word. Oh, my word. My word is upside down. I'm leaving forever.
Right. Yeah, that was kind of our, proving ourselves to Greg. Greg, at the time, Greg was always waiting for the next teenage music movement, or young youth music movement. And when punk kind of, as David explained, kind of sputtered and turned into hardcore, he lost interest in punk. He thought maybe power pop would be the next thing. That wasn't really happening. And then he sort of saw that there was a movement of bands playing sort of 60s garage and psychedelic music. And he put out the first Battle of the Garages album in 1981. And from that was the beginning of the whole scene, really. And that had the one track by the Crawdaddies on it. And then he wanted to do a second one. He wanted to do a series of them. And at that point, the Telltale Hearts had formed. So, he more or less said, we were a shoo-in to be on that album, We just had to prove ourselves and record one song that was decent, which was easy enough. So from that, I don't know when that was probably 83, and then 84 we recorded the debut album. And right away he wanted a full album. He didn't want to mess around with singles. And that was I found out later that was Greg Shaw's business model, because a friend of mine was starting a label not long after that, and Greg said, oh, it's really simple. You just press 1,000 copies of the album and you don't pay the band. So that's kind of how it went. But that was fine with us. We were just happy to have a record deal. We didn't think that we were going to make money off of it. I mean, how?
It was fun to be in the studio.
It's what?
It was fun to go to the studio, and that was like a new experience for me to actually be in a recording studio and do that.
Yeah, I think I'd done some recording with the Crawdaddies, but it was always in some amateur kind of setup, and this was my first time, I think all of us, in a sort of professional studio, and we were a little out of our depth, I think.
Right, I remember being a little intimidated, particularly in the way that way we envisioned recording an album, we'd go in and set up like we did in our practice studio, and they would put a couple mics in front of us and we would play our songs. But we were in a big studio and they separated everything, and that was foreign to us.
Yeah, we didn't know much. There was a few things we knew, like they wanted to put Bill's keyboard direct into the board, and we knew that was not good. We wanted the sound of the amplifier. But they said, well, let's do, we'll put one line in the board and then we'll also have a microphone on the amplifier. And then we had to fight during the mix to have the amplifier track, which was the one that sounded great, rather than the one that sounded like really thin and
like a Casio,
which ended up being used on some of the mixes. I put a lot of trust in Greg because I had so much respect for him, but he was really a hands-off kind of producer. I know he'd worked with the Flaming Groovies, but later I learned he was just kind of sitting there while Dave Edmunds did all the work, So we learned soon that Greg really didn't know that much about production, and he kind of left it to the engineer, and we just tried to figure out as best we can how to make it sound good. But we were a little disappointed at the time.
It was difficult to get a good sound in there. It really was.
Yeah.
Well, you remember Mike and I went, we got the original tapes, and we had when we did the CD compilation, and that was about 93, 94, something like that. And we went back and got the original tapes, and we had to, they had to be baked first. But I remember just the record, everything was pretty strangely recorded. You remember that, Mike? I mean, I remember just like one of the things I remember about that clearly is like, I didn't know what I was doing in the studio, and I was playing the maracas right next to my face while I was singing. And now, of course, you do it separately and whatever. But that was one of the things there wasn't much we could do.
We were trying to do it like we did it live, but they sucked all the stuff out of the room, But I think when Ray and I went and remixed it, we managed to make it sound quite a bit better. There was some good stuff on the tracks. It was just badly thought out. I mean, in the ultimately at this point, I think it stands up fine. The songs were good, and people like it. So I always kind of laugh at bands bitching about the mix on their album from all those years ago. Iggy's still bitching about the mix on Raw Power. That's still the best mix.
Well, yeah, it's funny too because they did a remixed Raw Power, which I can't stand. I heard it several years later.
Yeah, he did it. Yeah,
it's pretty good. I thought it's pretty good, but it's no Raw Power.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, I wanted to back up a little bit and talk about how the songs were written. So even before you guys recorded it, and of the 12 songs that are on the album, 7 of them are originals. So Ray, you wrote the lead-off track, "Crawling Back to Me," and "Come and Gone" from side 2. And then "She's Not What Love Is For," "You're a Dirty Liar," "Forever Alone," and the album closer, "Won't Need Yours." So that was Mike and Bill doing a co-write on that. And then finally, "Losing Myself."
Losing myself in a crowd seemed like a thing to do, but now the faces that I see remind me of you. If I knew what I wanted, then I'd have it, that's for sure. But that's the only thing I'm sure of, 'cause I can't stand this no more. I just can't see, babe, to live just like I am. Without answers to my questions, I'll leave you to the end.
Bill and Eric, I understand, wrote that. So how did you guys bring songs to the band, and how did these co-writes happen?
Well, Bill and I lived together. We were roommates, so it was logical that we would write together, So
and we were always, Mike and I were always pissed off about something. And actually, maybe it was more me. So the words were usually reflecting some youthful angst about a girl.
Yeah.
Because that's just like, that was who we were and what we were going through at that time.
And then it became my job to to be sort of Cyrano and Bergerac character, I got to yell at Bill's girlfriends from the stage.
That's right. Because I was too cowardly to say it myself, so I hid behind Ray.
I wrote primarily, I think, I want to say Crawling Back to Me was one of the first songs I'd ever written. And, you can go back and look at those and you can almost break down the origins. I mean, they were all really derivative songs. But I think the magic was in the way that we put them together, put the pieces together. I can go back and listen to one of my favorite songs that we ever recorded was It's Not Me, which was on the EP, and that's Bill. I think you wrote that one by yourself, I think, right?
Yeah,
It's Not Me.
so,
You got eyes like a raging fire. Tell me how myself is with inside. You got eyes like golden blue. Oh, you can't see, no, you can't see.
And yeah, you can hear some bits and pieces of songs that you like, but the sum factor is brilliant.
yeah.
I told you that, Bill. I really like that
The
one.
drums are great, and I love the way the guitar and the harmonica kind of play off each other. There was, I think, I don't know if this is natural, but during that time when you and I lived together, Mike, that was just a normal thing, I think, for us, is we just constantly had music in our heads. And so we would try to write it down, and then you were there and I was there. So you'd kind of like play a lick, or maybe I'd play something on the keyboard, and we kind of just fumble together and finally get a melody out of it, and then come up with some words that were suitably pissed off that rhymed occasionally. It seemed very simple, but I remember writing songs like in 4th grade, when I was just trying to learn how to play music. And they were horrible, but they were always very much inspired by another song that I tried to sort of model after. So I think a lot of the Telltale Hearts had lots of mixed influence songs. And you couldn't really pinpoint a single artist that we were influenced by. It was a pretty good blend.
I think all bands start off doing that, and I think what I think is important is that there was, as you said, 7 out of the 12 songs were original, and that was very much what we decided to do as a band. Is that we didn't want to make an album of covers because we saw other bands doing that. Other bands would play sets that were all covers of things off Pebbles albums. And we were like, well, what would be the point of, doing that? What would be the point of, doing Voices Green and Purple and, 1, 2, 5, So we wanted to do something original because we wanted to have an album that, reflected us, that sounded like us, and it wasn't like some kind of jukebox or something. And then the covers we did do, they were songs that nobody else really knew about at that time. No other bands were doing them, nobody knew about them, and they were telling people something about who we were,
Right.
Yeah, I think that's an important point. I mean, we really did carefully choose the covers for that first album. You'll notice there are 2 Outsiders, 2 Q65, and a Pretty Things. That's, so if you kind of take a look at what we were all about at the time, that's it right there.
Yeah,
Q65, Outsiders, Pretty Things, and then you can maybe add in the Seeds.
Yeah.
Add Seeds in there and a couple of other.
Maybe a little Chocolate Watch Band.
Yeah, we knew by putting we did a Pretty Things song, but it was a really kind of obscure B-side, and we knew that we loved the song and we thought we did a pretty good version of it, but it was because we knew that some kid in a record shop that got it would see, oh my God, they do Pretty Things, Me Needing You, I'm going to buy the album, because I knew that if I would have seen a band that would have done that song, I would have bought the album instantly, or, an Outsiders song or whatever.
But you know what, I'd like to add that just before we made that album, Ray, you were talking about how, you know, we were recording ourselves in the practice studio. And to me, those are sort of some of my favorite days, maybe my favorite days for the band, because we had this space in downtown San Diego in the old sort of warehouse / red light district. It was just a really seedy part of downtown at the time. And we had a storefront that we were using as our practice space, and this really interesting guy named Steve Epineter. I don't want to go too much into it, but Steve was this incredible character who liked our band. He was an older guy, and he lived in that storefront, and he let us leave our equipment in there, and we'd go in there and practice all the time. And we recorded, I think, on like a 2-track reel-to-reel or something, a recording that has some of those early demos of the band. And I love that most of all. Yeah, exactly.
Cracking Up was awesome.
Bill, wait till you hear the version of Cracking Up on this tape that we just uncovered. So
really?
Yeah, there was a videotape. This guy, Mike Mahoney, taped us playing live at the Music Machine on Pico Boulevard, LA in 1984, June of 1984. He made a tape. He gave me that tape way back then, and then it disappeared after only a couple of years, and I don't think anybody else had a copy of it. And I've been bugging that guy, Mike Mahoney, for it for annually, every year for the last 32 years, I think. I always send him, I send him a message, an email every year and ask him about it.
What the hell took him so long?
He never came through. He never came through. He's always said like, oh, well, it might be in my parents' house. And then it became like, I don't even know if it exists anymore. So I had given up on it. But then the version that was my copy, that VHS tape, which had been stolen from me, I didn't never know where it went, turned up recently, like about 2 weeks ago, Bill. Just showed up 2 weeks ago.
Showed up where? Like in the mail?
Ahmad had it.
No.
Yeah.
Get out of
here. This guy who owns a scooter shop, like, posted on Facebook, look what I found. This is videotape. And David was
no way.
It stolen from my house.
That's my dad. So
that's hilarious.
He and that guy started dragging his heels. He wasn't going to give it up. So I had to go up there and give him some money and get it. And I got it.
Did you really?
Yeah. No, I got it. And then I got it transferred. The digital transfer I just picked up an hour before this meeting, and it's currently like uploading to Dropbox for you guys. But I already watched it, and it looks and sounds, I mean, amazing. The quality is perfect. Nobody's played that thing since
I remember seeing a bad quality version of it many, many years ago, like just a couple songs. So yeah.
Is that with all the sparkly stuff behind us?
Yeah,
like
right. And that made it even more blurry and VHS looking.
No, I mean, it looks like a VHS, Mike, but it looks way better than you remember.
I'm sure mine was a copy of a copy of a copy or something like that.
Could be.
Yeah, probably cleaned it up.
Well, it's in great shape, and it sounds a lot like the Studio 517 recordings. I mean, you would even think it was that's what you were listening to. The quality is so good.
Wow.
So what Dave's talking about really was I'm thinking that you know, would have been within the first couple of months of us starting, we found this practice space downtown through, I believe, Steve Epineter had taken some crawdaddy photos, I believe.
Yeah, that's right.
And that was our connection. But that became our home base. We practiced there, and we ended up putting on shows there.
Yeah, for like $2.
I think we did play the night before.
$2. It was all ages, and that was really kind of how our little scene began to grow. And what was really cool about that is that there were punks, there were mods, there were like heavy metal kids, goth kids, just disaffected youth looking for something to do on a Friday night for $2. You know.
Can't beat that.
And so yeah, yep.
Yeah.
And so that's a pretty legendary venue. Not long after we recorded the series of demos, and some of your listeners might know that Munster Records in Spain put out an EP a couple of years back that had some of those songs on it. We wanted to there it is. We wanted to make sure that people heard them, because re-listening to them, I think that's some of the best stuff that we did. And then about the same time, and there is a video that's been uploaded to YouTube. We we filmed for cable television a video of ourselves lip syncing to the songs. So I think it's Cry. I think is Cry. No, it's Hey Tiger. Hey Tiger. That's the video. Have you seen that, Bill?
Yeah, the public TV one with Audrey interviewing us.
No, that's a good.
No, not that one. No, not that one. That's what's happening. So I'll get you a link. This is this was recorded in '84, and it was recorded out in La Mesa, I think. We went to some studio at 6 o'clock in the morning and lip synced to our demo tape.
Yeah, I was probably already drunk, so I don't remember that.
Well, it's still drunk.
I remember you telling the interviewer that you were born in a flower garden, so it's quite possible.
It is possible.
Jeff and I really wanted to know, before we move forward, about the 5 covers. Who brought it to the band? Or did each of you bring one and then it was just kind of all right, yeah, those are the 5?
No, I mean, I would say certainly at this point, from the beginning and throughout most of the band, Mike brought us a lot of new sounds. You know, I don't remember, Mike, how you started getting into the Dutch R&B bands, but you know, Mike would kind of share them with us, and then we became almost like evangelists. You know, we wanted everybody to hear. We wanted everybody to know about them.
Yeah, so, it was a bit like with it was a bit like when the Stones used to, you know, talk about turning people onto like Howlin' Wolf and Muddy Waters. We were trying to turn people on to, you know, Q65 and you know, the Outsiders and, you know, all those bands we used to cover. You know, it was very important. You know, I mean, you know, for me, I thought that was the best music. That was the peak of music. It was the most exciting stuff, and I thought if people just heard that music, you know, they would be converted because it was impossible not to like. So, yeah, very evangelistic that way.
But I think you know, the last 40 years or so has really kind of shown that to be true, because Mike, not only through the records that we made, etc., but certainly through Mike's musical projects and through his magazine Ugly Things. I mean, that gospel has been spread worldwide. I mean, there's scenes that popped up all over the world that never would have seen the light of day had it not been for Ugly Things and for you know, I think for the Telltale Hearts as well.
Yeah, that's certainly the case for me. You guys turned me on to those bands, so I thank you guys for that. So we wanted to talk about this record next. So 1985, you guys released on Vox Records the Now sound of the Telltale Hearts. And I don't know if it's considered an EP or a mini LP, but a 6-song record. And on this one, the band has a new producer. So you've got Mark Neal on here, and the engineer is Dave Doyle. And we know that the debut was recorded at Silvery Moon, which I know Greg Shaw brought a lot of his Vox bands to that studio, we understand. But I'm guessing that this one wasn't recorded at Silvery Moon, since you have a new producer.
Del Zura, right?
Yeah, I mean, after the experience with the first album, you know, we wanted to get it right, and we knew Mark and Dave a little bit because they played with the Unknowns, and they had a studio which was out in Dulzura, and so I think we went and visited the studio, and everything was completely 1963. You know, the ashtrays, you know, every detail, and we're like, this is the place for us, you know.
If you're not from San Diego, Dulzura is the sticks, man. It is like way out in East,
like past Santee.
Yeah, it's out in it's in the mountains, you know. So you really, it's like this shack in the middle of nowhere, and then you open it up, and it's like Chess Studios.
Yeah.
Like it's like a portal to another.
Not everybody could record there. You know, they didn't advertise. You couldn't just call up and book time. You almost sort of had to pass an audition with Mark to meet his level of acceptance. Otherwise, he wouldn't record you.
And you had to bring a gift of Carl Budding lunch meat. His favorite.
And Mark Neal went on to produce like the Black Keys and all kinds.
Oh yeah. I mean, he got nominated for a Grammy for that, I think.
Yeah.
Muscle Shoals Studio, I think.
But anyway, yeah. So it was 3 tracks, and I think that the genius of Mark Neal was in contrast with Silvery Moon. Silvery Moon, we do a take and they go, okay, cool, next. Mark Neal would make us work. You know, he'd make us work for it. And I really think he did a great job of pulling out some of the best guitar solos out of Eric, some of my best vocals, Mike and Bill and David's playing. I think he did a really great job with that. Plus, he had a real good ear for the sound that we wanted.
Yeah.
So I think we were all very much pleased with that EP. And I wonder why we didn't record more songs at that time. I wonder why we put out an EP.
I think we probably should have waited and written a few more, but I think we wanted to kind of erase the previous album and get something else out that was more representative, probably.
That sounds about right.
It was either that or maybe Eric was already considering leaving. I don't know. I don't really remember.
I don't think so. I don't think at that time. No, but you know, back to Mark's studio too, besides the fact that it was all old equipment, after the experience at Silvery Moon, it's like I remember the second we heard Bill's harmonica in the microphone, we were like, okay, we don't need to do anything. This is exactly the sound that we want.
Yeah.
We didn't even have to work at all.
He had an echo chamber, you know, and he just, all the best microphones. So, and I remember the drum sound too. Like, this is how the drums sound. And whereas at Silvery Moon, you know, they didn't sound like David's drums, you know?
Yeah, it was a no-brainer. As soon as we stepped in, it was like, oh, this is easy now, you know?
And Mike, did Mark have a Leslie speaker?
I think we didn't use that until later. I don't think we used that on the Telltale Hearts.
Yeah, I remember using it on the other single, but I was thinking he had one there, but whatever the sound was, every instrument was exactly how we had envisioned it being. So when we were done with that album, I was so proud and excited that we finally captured really the live sound of the Telltale Hearts.
Yeah. I mean, Mark's, you know, he really is a genius, and you know, the genius of it was, it meant that we didn't have to be thinking about how things were going to be sounding on the tape. We could just focus on the performance. You know, which is how it should be. If you're the band, you know, you should just be focusing on playing your part and playing together with the band, not wondering whether you were going to be getting the right tone on your bass guitar or whatever on the tape. Yeah. You knew Mark had that covered. You didn't have to worry about any of that. So you just wanted to, you know, play. I mean, the only complaint was that he wouldn't let you drink in the studio, so we had to go outside every time we wanted a beer. So, but that was probably smart on his part.
Oh yeah.
And if you'll look at the song choices for the EP, also we've got 4 originals, and then we had a Dutch cover and a Downlander Sec cover.
Yep.
So once again, similar formula. We wanted to showcase our original music, but also kind of remind our fans where we came from and share new music with them as well.
Excellent. I will say that the sound of this is very authentic. I feel like to the sound of about 66, 67. It has that, not only what you guys are performing, but the production too, in my opinion. It just, even the look of the cover just has that, it just feels authentic to me. But one thing, Ray, you were mentioning about the songs, that there's 4 originals and 2 covers on this one. One thing that always fascinates me as a wannabe musician is sequencing. So I was real curious for the debut record and for the Now sound, how did you as a band come up with the sequencing, or was that something that Greg Shaw did? How did you guys work out the sequencing on these records?
We definitely decided the sequence. And I don't remember, we wouldn't never let anybody else make a decision like that. And I think we just probably just made different cassettes, and circulated them. How about this? No, let's move these around. I think we discussed it among the band.
Right. I remember, we had this delusion we were going to have a hit record at some point, so we would think
Really?
the lead off of the EP could be our single, So
back in those days, I think you created sort of a scene that started with the first song and ended with the last song, and you had to create a story in between.
Yeah, and it had to be 2 sides,
You would listen to the whole story.
right, yeah. So you have 2 acts. You have Act 1. You want to start out strong and powerful. You want to end powerful, but you want to pace everything as well. That's kind of a lost art. Constructing an album. It's not really the same constructing a Spotify playlist, but
Yeah, I remember, I think there was never any question that Crawling Back to Me was going to be the opening song on the album, because I think that was the strongest song. We think we all knew that was a song that instantly grabbed you and sort of said what we were all about, if you didn't like that one, you probably weren't going to like the band, so that's, some people are only going to give you like half of the first song to decide, so we thought that was, if they don't like that, then screw them. They're not going to like anything else.
Screw 'em,
Jeff and I had another question. That's about 1986. So from our understanding, that's the year when the band decides to call it quits. And we were wondering if you could let us know or share with our listeners, is this just a natural evolution? People are moving into different directions, or what leads to this decision?
Well, I think I definitely left first, and I think it was a natural direction change for me. It wasn't anything specific or anything. It just seemed right at the time. Whether it was or not, I'm not sure, but
Eric, do you remember when about 86?
Oh, yeah.
Because I think we started playing with Peter that summer of 86.
Yeah, and I think the band lasted probably till 87. Maybe.
The beginning of 87 is when the band completely split up.
I remember one live show on a green tiny stage at a Chinese restaurant in 1987, and I think that was our last show.
That was a very weird one. Yeah, it was.
You remember that?
I remember that.
I remember it's like playing at one of those Japanese steakhouses. Instead of chopping vegetables, you had the Telltale Hearts in the middle. Yeah. That was our last.
Yeah,
gig,
and the puppet show was after us, and I think that's when we knew that the arc was heading down at that point. I think when you're young, that age, most bands only last like 3 to 5 years, those first early bands. And then they either have to completely change the lineup or they break up altogether. So I think we kind of broke up at the right time. It just wasn't as fun anymore. By that point, everybody was kind of pulling in slightly different directions and nobody was happy about it. And
really the first, I think the big blow really, was when Eric left. Because we weren't, after that, we grabbed Peter and we had some good shows, and I think we recorded I really liked the single we recorded.
Yeah.
It really wasn't the Telltale Hearts.
Once you change that one element, you lose something of the original magic. So even though Peter was like a fantastic guitarist and a great guy, he just wasn't really a Telltale Heart.
There's no replacement for the Bacher fuzz tone.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah, and Eric was such an important important part of the sound. I mean, you hear Eric's guitar playing and you recognize that guitar, the style and the sound instantly.
Yeah. Yeah, and you had a certain balance of personalities. And then when you take one of them out and put in a new personality, the whole chemistry is thrown off, the whole balance of, you know, characters and sound, it gets thrown out of balance, and you never quite, you know, get the balance back again. You kind of like you fall off the unicycle at that point, you know.
It was like when the construction worker left the Village People.
Yeah,
you know? After that, they just never quite
Never
got
really
the
was.
sound.
Eric kind of was the construction worker of the band. I was the Indian.
You guys have mentioned your live performances, and I want to say, as a fan, you guys were amazing live. So I had the great fortune of seeing you guys. I think I can remember 3 times seeing you. Once was near SDSU. I think it could have been a frat house, and I think I helped you guys move your amps into the backyard, and it was crazy. Like people were going
Wasn't there a
insane.
swimming pool?
Resource Center. Yeah, called the
Yes.
Peace Resource Center, and I don't remember how we became connected with the Peace
Oh,
Resource
I remember.
Center.
It was a customer at the coffee shop where I worked at. He made his flyers there, and so he asked if our band would play one of their events, and we played several of them.
Yeah, so I remember us doing. I know we did a benefit for the Mexico City earthquake victims once. The rest were just kind of general, like anti-draft benefits. But yeah, you remember correctly. It was a house, and there was a pool outside. So we were there wasn't too much space between the band and the pool for the audience, but they lined up there. And I also remember us playing. I don't know if it was because it was raining or whatever, but I remember us playing inside the house once because there was a tree in the middle of the living room. You guys remember that house? The tree in the middle, because I just remember climbing up the tree and scraping all my forearms up and everything. Yeah, that's the Peace Resource Center.
Nice. I remember that being a great show, and another great show, and I thought it was a weird double bill, but the second time I think that I saw you guys, I think it was December 21st, 1985, if I'm looking back at my notes right, at the North Park Lions Club, when you guys opened up for Jesus and Mary Chain. And it was real interesting, because you guys brought the energy. I mean, everybody was into it, going crazy, dancing, and then Jesus and Mary Chain came on. I don't know if you guys talked to them backstage or whatever, but I don't know if it was their shtick or whatever, but they came on, didn't face the audience, looked away from the audience. At the end of their set, they dropped their instruments and walked off. It looked like they could care less about these Americans, but you guys just brought this energy level, and that place was going insane. Like I was in the middle from the front to the back, and in the middle of the stage, and just everybody was going wild for your set. But your live performances were always just incredible.
There was a lot of publicity and a lot of hype about the Jesus and the Mary Chain, or Jesus and Mary Chain. I think they had formed about 6 months earlier in England, and they were playing them on the radio locally here. And it was a pretty good gig for us to land at the time. I remember being really bored by them. I think most of us were out in the parking lot throughout.
Yeah, I was out in the parking lot drinking beer the whole time, I think.
Yeah, they didn't have. Yeah, it was interesting because you guys had this energy level that, all 3 times that I saw you were just crazy energy level. And then they came on, and I like Jesus and Mary Chain, but they looked like they could care less about being there. I don't know if it was a shtick, but no energy whatsoever,
I
like
remember
zero
that.
level energy, and you guys were like 110% energy, just
Yeah, that might have been.
off the
I think
bat.
that was part of their shtick. I know one of the guitarists turned completely around and faced his amp the whole set. I think.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
funnily enough, Chris Marstello, the guitarist in the Loons, that was the first time he saw the Telltale Hearts. He went there to see the Jesus and Mary chain. So he thought they were good too, but he was won over by us that night. So,
Yeah, great live.
We-
Yeah, you guys were a great live performance band. The last time that I saw you guys was in '94 at the Casbah. Yeah, I think you guys did a 6-show tour, and you were promoting the High Tide Big Noses and Pizza Faces compilation. So that was the compilation that Ray, you were talking about earlier, that you and Mike put together, which is a fantastic compilation.
We all put that
yeah.
together. But what
Okay.
the role Mike and I played was that we went up to LA and got the original tapes from Greg Shaw of the first album. And the idea was, okay, well, we're going to fix this now. You know, we've been waiting 10 years to do this. And so we just remixed, 6 to 8 songs from that. But that was a complete band effort. I remember we met at my apartment over on First Avenue, and we wrote out all the songs that we wanted to go on there. We wanted to be on the CD, and yeah, it was a full band project. We also the liner notes were kind of written in piecemeal fashion. We each kind of contributed sections, and then I think at the end Mike kind of hobbled them all together, translated them into English.
Okay, Jeff and I have a question that it's a little out of order, but we want to know. And this goes to all of you. Do you prefer live or playing in the studio?
Oh, live.
I mean, I think with the Telltale Hearts, the live shows was my best memories of that band for sure. Because even with every time in the studio, it was a bit more like work. I mean, I was happy with the records, but live was always very special, and trying to find that energy level. And some nights were really, really great, and that's my best memory. It's the best live shows. Like that one you mentioned at North Park Lions Club. That was I remember that also being a really, really good show. Because they weren't always, but a lot of the time they were.
What about that the wedding we played? Wasn't it a Mexican couple that got married?
Oh, it was. Yeah.
What was that?
Well,
How'd that happen?
I'll tell you what I remember about that. That was in Whittier, and I think it was did we get that through a friend of Tony Suarez or Tony? Anyway, so a friend of a friend wanted us to play a wedding. What I remember about that gig is that I had laryngitis. So I didn't sing a note during that song. I had an old guitar that I plugged in, and we just did like instrumental versions of our songs. It was a really strange afternoon.
Yeah.
Kind of forgotten now.
But we did play some strange gigs.
So Eric and Dave, same for you, live over
Absolutely
studio?
live, yeah.
And Dave?
Oh, of course. I mean, without a doubt. The
Yeah.
studio was terrifying for me.
Live stages were terrifying too, but they were so fun. It was like jumping off a bridge. You just never knew what was going to happen.
Yeah, there were some songs like playing At the River's Edge or something where it was.
It was like, in my case, I never knew if it was Bill or Eric who was going to destroy my drum set that night.
or if your pedal, the shoelace was going to hold it together.
Yeah, it was a little different take on the Pete Townsend construction of instruments. They would destroy David's instrument.
Well, they also destroyed their own. I remember Bill kicking in a few amps now and then.
Oh,
Eric,
yeah.
too.
Yeah.
You remember Lurch shouting out at the end of Hey Tiger, I loved it.
Last moment. What were some of the other weird shows we played? Because, did we ever play? Remember on Interstate 8, there used to be that strip club forever that had a big go-go dancer on top of it.
Oh, yeah.
Did we play in there once?
Oh, I wish.
I felt like
I think we just went there.
no. I
night.
feel like we had a gig there when it was after it was the the strip bar.
I don't know. I tell you what gig I do remember. It was really, really weird. It was a Los Angeles gig, and it was a restaurant. Now, I always have a problem playing. I don't like playing in the daytime, and I really don't like playing for people who are eating food and drinking coffee. It just seems so anti-rock and roll to me.
Yeah.
But you guys remember it was a restaurant called Colors, and we were playing, and in songs there was the clanking of forks and knives on plates, and it's really bizarre.
See, we would have never played in places like that in '84, I don't think, and I think that's part of also why the band eventually had to end, because in the early days the band was such a part of a movement. It was part of a scene. It was part of this youth culture, and it was like creating shows in the Greenwich Village West basement. I mean, yeah, we played some legit clubs, but there was just something about it. Always felt like people that liked that kind of music were coming to take over that space or something. It had that kind of punk vibe to it. But then, yeah, when you start playing places like Colors,
yeah, it just takes us completely out of our element, and we didn't control it seemed like we controlled the stage anymore.
Yeah. And I can't imagine we got paid anything, so it wasn't like we were banking money on those.
We probably got dinner.
Yeah, that was probably part of the reason that we kind of withered on the vine, is because we only played kind of in the local area. I mean, we did one tour of Missouri, and I think we went up to San Francisco and Las Vegas, but we never did any big tours. We never left the country. We could have gone to Europe like all the other bands, but for one thing, I couldn't travel because I was undocumented alien.
I get that.
So I held them back. I held them back.
Well, I wanted to talk about the compilation a little bit more. As I mentioned, the compilation is called High Tide, Big Noses, and Pizza Faces. And I imagine you guys got that from the Rolling Stones 1966 compilation, Big Hits, High Tide, and Greengrass.
Yes.
I believe that the liner notes say something to the effect that the title, came from the Pandora's Paula Pierce. Is that correct? At least as far as the Big Noses and Pizza Faces.
It wasn't Paula. It was another member.
I believe it was Gwen Kahn. Yeah, she had made an offhand remark to somebody like, "Oh yeah, the Telltale Hearts. That's just a bunch of boys with big noses and pizza faces," and that got back to us, and we thought that was great. So we stored that away for 10 years before we got a chance to use it for something.
I remember around that time, somebody sent us that anonymous letter. You remember that anonymous letter that called out each and every one of us? I think they said something about that I was like Mick Jagger with a monkey butt, and do you remember that letter, Mike?
I do remember that monkey butt line. I don't think I have that letter. Who has it? I hope somebody does.
I certainly don't. But yeah, anyway, I thought maybe that had come from.
Sounds like a disgruntled fan.
We did get some really great fan letters from around the world.
Those were the gruntled fans. Most of our fans were gruntled.
They were gruntled. They weren't disgruntled, right? The
Italian guys.
It's actually been really, really fun, since that time, when I've done a little bit of traveling, and certainly the advent of social media. We've met some of the people who sent us fan letters when they were kids, and they went on to form bands. I actually met Boy from Barcelona. You remember Boy from Barcelona? I met him. He's a great guy. He actually founded Penniman Records in Spain. Yeah, that was to me that was one of the biggest. That was one of the biggest eye openers for me, I think, because as Mike started earlier, I think you start a band and your ambition, I think, is to, hey, let's play a really fun gig, and your ambitions slightly grow. We were all excited about hearing ourselves on the radio and having an album released, but Bomb had really great distribution. That's one thing that record company had. They may not have paid the bands very well, but their records got into these little record stores all over the world. So we started getting letters from literally everywhere.
What was the biggest thing for me, because when I was a little kid, I didn't have a lot of friends, so I would just ride my bike all over. And one place I always ended up at was Tower Records down on Midway Drive. And I would just spend hours there thumbing through album covers. And I just fell in love with album art. And that's kind of how I got to know different bands and learn about different bands. And then one day in the tees, there was the Telltale Hearts at Tower fucking Records, man. And that was a big deal.
Yeah, yeah.
Do any of you remember hearing us on the radio the first time? Like I remember hearing this on 91X, and I just
91X, yeah.
Like in the middle of the afternoon.
Yeah. We thought for sure we were going to be huge.
I heard us on Rodney on the Rock in LA, and that was a big
yeah.
because
Rodney played us a few
that,
times,
right?
yeah. But yeah, there was some, it was kind of a small scene spread out all over the world. That's what it was. But everybody that was in it was very enthusiastic. It was, and that kind of it's carried over to this day. People that love that '60s music. But back then it was all sending cassettes through the mail.
Yeah.
Actual snail mail letters. It was pretty cool.
Well, Mike, I'm glad you mentioned that, because Jeff and I had a question about some of the things that, or at least some of the things that have happened since this mini tour for the compilation. So we know the band played in 2004 at the behest of Nick Phillips, head of Australia's Corduroy Records, who released a couple of live albums of the band.
Yeah.
And we also know the band played a handful of songs at this 2004 performance again in September of 2007 at the Casbah in San Diego, and then at a street fair the next day.
That was a full-fledged reunion that we did, our last full-fledged reunion. It was in 2007, all original 5 members, and we did a show at the Casbah on Friday night, and the Saturday night we played at the Adams Avenue Street there. Yep. The gig you mentioned before that wasn't really a reunion gig. In fact, a friend of ours who discovered us, he and an Australian friend of ours, he and a friend were kind of hitchhiking across the U.S. and they ended up, Dave will tell the story, he ended up meeting David in Los Angeles. And ended up hanging out with us for several months. But he was in town in 2004, I guess it was, and last minute kind of called Mike up, and Mike managed to get 4 of the 5 of us. Bill was out of town, and we made fools of ourselves at
Kensington Club.
The Kensington.
Yeah, we first met Nick Phillips in 1984 with a bunch of the Australian guys that traveling the country. And they kind of became like really, really good friends and fans of the band, and still to this day really good friends with Nick. But yeah, so that's why we did that, and with no rehearsal got up and did a couple songs, because it's Nick. He was our most ardent fan, and those live albums he put out, which was some recordings that we'd made, I think, on a cassette when we went to Missouri in 1985. And he heard the tapes, and he wanted to put out not 1 but 2 live albums, like volumes 1 and 2. I remember saying, "What are we, John Coltrane or something?"
And volume 2 has a cartoon rendering of us as the Simpsons on the cover, which and I guess the connection is it was live in Springfield.
Yeah, That was a good inspired idea for the album cover. But yeah, I mean, the fact that he would put out those two live albums from a ropey cassette shows you how dedicated he was to the band. And it was things like that I think, you know, made me realize that what we did was worthwhile, because you know, that was some real devotion, you know. And so it kind of validated that, you know, maybe we had something that other bands didn't, you know. At least, you know, at least for some people, you know, I'm not saying we're better than other bands, but you know, we were captured something that people really.
We're better than God as a thing or whatever it is. But
Well, then, can we ask? Is there any thought about possibly getting together, playing live again?
not during COVID-19, there isn't.
Well, not now, but I mean,
We could do a virtual reunion show from our
I think this is
bedrooms.
the closest we're going to get at this point.
We're doing it now.
Yeah, this is it.
If we can play in that strip club on Interstate 8,
I think that was another band, Dave. I don't recall that.
I know it was in some kind of, it was some performance, but it wasn't the Telltale Heart thing.
Well, we wanted to make sure that our listeners know if there's a way to get any of the Telltale Hearts music. I own it on vinyl, and we talked about the record that was released in 2017, from Munster Records, and the 7-inch EP. And Mike, I bought that from you through the Ugly Things website. Do you guys have any way for our listeners to get a hold of your music?
I don't think there's anything left anymore. I know there's no more of those. That sold out really quickly. And then I asked Bump the other day if they had just one copy. I had a guy contact me from Israel that wanted an autographed copy of the Now Sound Telltale Heart. So I contacted Bump. If you have one copy, you know, you can sell me. And they said they don't even have any. So I think you're to get it now with eBay or Discogs.
okay.
Yeah, I think it would be kind of fun to put together a vinyl compilation. You know, I always think about some of the cool ones that Rhino put out in the 80s and the Ava compilations. It might be kind of cool to do something like that. You know, it's all involved.
I think,
but what's that?
You might have to if nothing's available. You know, if there's enough demand, I suppose.
What about streaming or downloading? Is that
for free
an
on
option?
streaming services?
Fair enough.
Yeah, everybody's already uploaded everything to YouTube anyway. So yeah. But in terms of, like, you're talking about actually having something to hold in your hands.
Yeah, probably not. So Ray, I know that you put out a best of CD that had songs that you've written with the Telltale Hearts and afterwards. Are those still available? Because I know the songs that
there's just a couple of songs on there are. I don't think the CD's available. Yeah, I have several cartons in my storage unit. That's about it.
Okay, all right.
Now we know who. So speaking of that, if any of our listeners would like to follow you on social media, are any of you on social media? Want to share? Twitter, Instagram, Facebook.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on Facebook. Ray's on Facebook. Eric.
We're all on date.
You know, we don't have
log in very often, but he's there.
Social media. You see how organized we are. There's no records available.
We have no web page.
We're maintaining the mystique.
This is kind of indicative of our rocket to nowhere Telltale Hearts. You know, I'm only being partially facetious. It was just kind of a lack of. I think we would have done really well to have a kind of a whip cracking manager. You know, like the Stones had, or but we just, I mean.
Well, you guys made some fantastic albums. You guys were fantastic live, and we touched a little bit about Ugly Things, and I definitely wanted to reiterate that to our listeners that Mike's been putting out this zine since I think 83, something like that, early 80s, mid 80s, and it's probably the best zine that you can get right now. So the Ugly Things magazine, it's just incredible. It's stock filled. It looks great. There's great material in there. Mike's been publishing this for the longest time. Mike, did you want to talk a little bit
Well,
about
yeah,
that?
that's always been something I did. I started in '83, which was, I mean, right before we formed the Telltale Hearts. I think I wanted, and Ray contributed and Bill to the first issues that we did. So yeah, and
I remember lots of glue sticks in the apartment.
It was actually at Carl's house, and I remember several of it was the summer of '83, and I remember several of us sitting around the big table at Carl's house, stapling those first issues together. And it's just, I mean, it's been, it's really been a joy for me to watch it take off, and just to see the level of writing and research and the popularity of the magazine now.
Yeah, I mean, that wasn't my plan to still be doing it 37 years later, but
it turned out to be a nice little career, though. I mean, it's pretty.
But it turned out to be what I love doing the most. And if you can make, you can pay your bills doing what you love doing most, then you kind of cracked it. So I'm happy about that. And I still have that attitude that I want to turn people on to that music. So,
one of the really fun parts about being involved with Mike and Ugly Things in those days was, getting to track down and meet our heroes. And Mike is out. I mean, I'm amazed. Mike, I think is there anybody that you haven't met that you're still hoping to, who's alive, of course, who you're still hoping to meet? Because I mean, once you meet Phil May and Dick Taylor, I mean, it's pretty hard to it's pretty hard to top that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to meet Keith Richards, or Bob Dylan, but it's probably not going to happen. But that I'd rather have met Dick Taylor and Phil May.
All right. Well, we asked for an hour from you guys. You mentioned meeting your heroes. You guys are definitely one of my heroes. Amazing band. You guys put out amazing music, and I'm really thankful that you guys are here. We wanted to ask one last question before we go, and we'll do roundtable. We wanted to ask if you, for each one of you, your favorite song that you had to play live, of either a cover or your own. So Ray, did you have a favorite that when you guys played live that you particularly liked to perform?
I don't know. Maybe I'm going to go with Crawling Back to Me, and I just really like playing that. We used to open our shows with that, and I did the way that each of the instruments came in separately, one by one. It was always really fun, and it was a good way to start off a gig with a lot of energy. Yeah.
What about you, Mike?
Well, there's a couple. It would have to be one of those ones where you just there was a little bit of improvisation involved, and anything could happen. So At the River's Edge was one that was always, I don't remember us ever playing a version of that where I wasn't thrilled the whole way through it. The adrenaline was pumping. And the other one was Won't You Listen by the Outsiders, where Eric stepped on that fuzz tone. And it's just, immediately the energy level was like through the roof. And we used to end with that one a lot, and it would just kind of usually end with guitars falling apart and amplifiers falling over and people falling off the stage. I got great memories of playing that song.
What about you, Eric?
I would have to say At the River's Edge was probably consistently the most fun to play, and just like Mike said, it's just it's undescribable, really. It just kind of took you away the whole time, and such a simple song to play, but so powerful at the same time.
What about you, Dave?
You know, piggybacking on what Mike said about songs that like where people freaked out and where it was just like, you know, anything could happen, is we often used to play that song "It Came to Me."
Oh yeah, I almost said that one too. Yeah.
That one, I don't think we ever didn't have fun playing that. We opened with it sometimes as well.
Yeah.
I think, and sometimes it would go on for a long time if it was sounding good or if we were having fun. And yeah, that was a fun song.
And what about you, Bill?
Well, I'm thinking I'm going to have to go with At the River's Edge also. It was just one of those songs that in part, I knew I wasn't going to fuck it up. I mean, there is a little bit of like selfishness and fear on sometimes when you just launch into a song. Sometimes I'll hit the wrong notes, and usually there will be someone in the audience to call me out on it. But that's one song where no matter how much we had been drinking, it always seemed to come out perfect.
You know, it's funny. I played because there's I think there's a live version of that on the CD compilation, and I had the opportunity to meet and play that version for 2 or 3 of the original New Colony 6, and they said they really liked our version of it. They just thought we did.
Wow.
That's great.
So that would
I
be
feel
it.
like one thing that never happened is there was never a recording of one of those crazy shows. I mean, when we played in San Diego and we had everybody that loved us out there, the shows would just have like, you know, so many screaming people and everybody freaking out, and it was such an intense energy level. And we really fed off of that. And that was never really captured. I mean, at the time when we were playing those kind of shows, we played this 1984 show and the Lingerie show too that's on tape. But in those places, we're playing in LA and we're kind of opening up, I think, playing fairly early, and you just don't have the audience there.
Yeah, we're not on our home turf. You know, there is a tape. I remember it. I spent the last 20 years looking for it, but it's we call it the Wabash Hall tape. Steve Hill recorded it. He's been looking in his garage for the last 30 years for it. So hopefully,
we did Smoke Rings by the Gants on that, huh?
Because that was a really great. That was I remember that being a great.
I think I have that one. I remember we did You're the Victor by Q65. And
well, I remember
you could hear Ron Silver shouting, "Ray, you're the vicar."
Yeah, so we used to be in our very early days, right after Mike had left the Crawdaddies. Oftentimes they'd show up and heckle us from the side of the stage. Remember those days? I was terrified by that too, because I had so much respect for Ron and Keith as musicians, and then, you know, look over to your left.
So, Dave, you mentioned that you had the tape that you recently digitized. Will this be available where our listeners can check it out?
Like an hour before this call, I got it. Yeah, I think Ray, you'll probably post it on your page with all the Telltale Heart stuff.
We'll do something with it. Maybe we'll do a live screening on Facebook and maybe we'll do something like that, you know.
It's really fun. It's much better than I remembered it, and I think
very cool. Well, we'll definitely share that if it becomes available. But I didn't want to take too much of your guys' time. Thank you so much, all of you guys. Amazing band. It's fun to have you guys here reunited, talking about these old times. And again, thank you for the music and for the live shows. And thank you all for coming on Paisley Sage, Raspberry and Rhyme, and talking about these days of the Telltale Hearts. I've been a fan for years, so thank you all so much.
Hey, good to see you all, everybody.
Jeffrey.
All right, thank you guys.
Thanks, guys.
See you later.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Hey, good to see you, Bill. Man, I'm glad you made it.
And he's gone.
the first one gone. All right, thank you guys so much.
Good to see all you guys.
All right.
Good night.
Bye-bye. Soraya, what did you think about those guys?
Well, first of all, how awesome is that all of them showed up?
Yeah, we didn't think we were going to get Bill. In fact, at the beginning, I said, we have no Bill here.
And let me tell you, the last to arrive is the first guy that pulled out an instrument and started playing his harmonica.
Yeah, I heard a mouth harp there for a bit.
Mouth harp, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I'm all, wait, are we gonna have a super duper live performance? I was expecting everybody else. I expected Ray to bring out some maracas.
Yeah.
But look, I mean, we know from the first listen, I really like this band. I like the sound of this band. So I'm newer to the Telltale Hearts. But you know, it looks like what it sounded like to me was there's a real synergy with this group of 5.
Yeah.
And you know, and when they were talking about playing live and when you started talking about it, I could imagine myself and the energy, you know, of playing live. I can already picture how this band looked. That's why I'm dying to hear this tape that Dave said he's uploading.
Right.
Because you know, while I can't, you know, transport back in time, I can definitely have this tape and kind of have an idea of what they sounded like live and, you know, kind of experience it with a little bit of time in between. But what a great band.
Yeah, yeah, really a great band. And I really liked when they were talking about, you mentioned like the chemistry, and I thought they did a great job of talking about that with Eric leaving, how not only the music, but just the chemistry of a band being together. I thought that was, I mean, they put it perfectly the way that they described it. It's just not the same, but they had this chemistry for these few years that were just, there was nothing like it in San Diego. And they're totally right. Like when you would go to these shows, people were into it. Like, I mean, it was a party, like just dancing, screaming, singing. It was a scene. You know, we talked about the Paisley Underground being a scene. There was this definite scene, and there would be people in day glow, mini skirts, and I mean, it was just that it was just a thing, you know. And the Telltale Hearts were a big part of that. And what the shows that I went to, it was just incredible to see the energy. And they talked about feeding up the energy off of the crowd. I think it was definitely mutual, because they would get going and everybody would just start going. I mean, just the energy of the band, the energy of the audience, especially with that show where they opened for Jesus and Mary Chain, which to me, it felt like it was a big deal, because I remember Jesus and Mary Chain being played on the radio, and I was a fan of Telltale Hearts at the time, so I was like, wow, this is a great double bill. And they just came, and just this energy level that the Telltale Hearts played was just off the roof. I mean, it was just incredible, and just the whole audience was just going crazy. And yeah, what a great band.
Two things that I found really interesting. One, you know, you and I have talked often about the role that Rodney plays in kind of helping expose people to new bands and kind of fresh sounding bands. But one of the things I found interesting was something that Mike and Ray mentioned about how they wanted to, you know, they kind of served that same role where, okay, if you're going to listen to the Telltale Hearts, you're going to know where our band kind of, what influences our band. And that, you know, Ray said, you know, we wanted to be, he said a different word, like it's not preachers, but we wanted to
evangelize,
share the word. We wanted to evangelize by turning people on to the bands that they like, the Pretty Things and the two Dutch bands, Q65 and the Outsiders, you know. So I'm like, you know, I love this idea of a band kind of saying, hey, don't just listen to us. We kind of want to turn you on to some other things that inform our music and kind of help you begin to kind of create this bigger picture of music. I found that fascinating. I mean, in truth, all bands do that, right? If you like us, know our source, right? It's here. But I like the way that Ray and Mike put it, you know, in the way that they discussed it.
Yeah.
And you know, you just, you know, two albums, and you know, this EP and this other EP, you know, through Monster Records, and you know, you just go, where are those tapes?
Yeah.
Give us more.
Yeah.
But you know, and then you know, it's just, it's a little, not sad, but you just kind of go, damn, I wish I didn't have to go to eBay and Discogs. I wish, you know, I could, you know, just get it however I want to get it. But, you know, I get it too. I understand, you know.
Yeah.
You know, okay. You know, if Bomp Records only had, you know, didn't even have one copy of a vinyl album, but I take the hope that Ray offered. He said, well, maybe a vinyl. Well, yeah, I crowdfund that.
Exactly.
Hell yeah. Jeff, what's your favorite Telltale Heart song that they played live?
Probably Crawling Back to Me. That you could tell when they played that one that they were all into it, and Ray grabbing those maracas and just going to town, and they were wild men on stage. So yeah, that's probably my favorite. But really, I mean, honestly, when they played live, there wasn't a bad song. They were just all great.
And how many bands can you say that about? Where, hey, when they did a live set, there wasn't a bum song in the set. You know, it's not every band, but I'm glad that, you know, and I think they all said it too. The songs are solid, and you know, there's good music there, and I liked hearing them talk about it. Like I didn't get a vibe that people were like, you know, they talked with joy about it.
Every single one of them sounds like that they look back on that time favorably.
Genuine.
Yep. Genuine. Yeah. So next up, we have our last in our mini series of Vox recording artists, and we'll be talking to a few of the guys from the band The Steps.
Oh yeah.
So that ought to be fun too. So
I think that's going to be great. This has been fun, and I've really enjoyed talking more in depth about these bands. You know, the Things First and Telltale Hearts now. So I don't know, gente. Agrubiar.
Groove on, Paisley people.
Okay, David. So I'll keep. Well, Dave's gone. All right. All right, you guys. Talk to you later.
You've been stealing all my records and my clothes.